A couple quick notes before I start. First, I made a Discord server where me, my friends, and anyone else who wants to join can hang out in. The link will be in the description, so check it out if you're interested. Second, at the end of this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about where I plan to go with the channel later down the line, as I frankly think that's something I should start to figure out. Stick around if you want to know. Anyway, it's time for me to finally make another Mob Psycho video. This is probably going to be a short video, especially compared to my other ones, but I thought it would be interesting to talk about how the Season 3 anime adaptation works in contrast to the manga, and also the parts I think succeeded or failed the most. If I'm being honest, the part of the manga that Season 3 covers is the only part I actually read, just because I first watched Seasons 1 and 2 before that part was adapted. And while Bones' adaptation has always been consistently fantastic, Season 3 included, there are many parts of this season that were less faithful to the original work, or even just things or choices I didn't expect. This includes some regarding the soundtrack. Of course, it's up to personal preference whether you consider some of these things good or bad, but I thought it would be worth talking about nonetheless. You don't need to have read the manga to watch this, just watching the anime is fine. Since there are 3 main arcs in Season 3, I thought it would make the most sense to talk about them in order. Also, I don't really care about the yokai hunter guy. So without further ado, the Divine Tree arc was probably the part of Season 3 that, in terms of its adaptation, I had the least grievances with. In fact, I'd say it's pretty much flawless. One thing that immediately stood out to me, even just watching the trailer when it first came out, is that Psycho Helmet himself is, not just green? Which I guess makes more sense considering how multiple people mistake him for being a real person. It also added another layer of creepiness to the whole arc, which I really enjoyed. The adaptation really leaned into this creepiness for the length of the arc, which I loved. Here, what Liberty's Bones took with it really helped build up the unsettling vibe, all up until Mob actually entered the tree itself, where the tension was properly maintained throughout his entire confrontation with Psycho Helmet, and later Dimple. Also, it kind of goes without saying, but Exist is such a perfect song for the scene in which it was played in the arc as a whole. I'm really glad they only used it twice, as it really made those moments feel special. The original scores for this arc fit really well too. I especially liked how some of them incorporated choir music. It really added to the whole culty vibe. One thing that stood out to me throughout this arc's adaptation was the impeccable voice work of Akio Otsuka, who found really solid ways of vocally distinguishing between Psycho Helmet, God Dimple, and all of Dimple's other various forms. You can see this demonstrated really well in the scene where Dimple insults Mob's shirt, and briefly drops his godlike persona to address Mob naturally, as a friend. This also meant the comedy of that moment was held up just as strongly as it was in the manga, which I appreciated. And of course you have to mention Setsuo Ito's voice work, which is fantastic all around but especially during this arc. That scene at the end of him curled up in bed, mourning Dimple and sobbing to himself is just so much more gut-wrenching with the actual voice acting. Overall, I was really satisfied with how this arc was executed in the anime. Not much else to say beyond that, quite honestly. I have more mixed feelings about this one. I'm surprised I haven't really talked about this arc before on this channel, but better late than never, I suppose. The setup was pretty good, and of course the animation was incredible all around, specifically in episode 8. I've also always loved the work of Tomei's voice actor, Atsumi Tanizaki, and I thought this arc really gave her the chance to shine. I really hope we get to see more of her if there's an adaptation of the Reagan spin-off. But I thought there was a very big tonal dissonance between the manga and the anime versions of this arc. And honestly, what I think this boils down to is that the manga seems a lot sillier with how it handled things. Some examples of this are the smaller bits with Takanaka hearing everyone's messed up thoughts, or the joke with Reagan's face looking like a beginner's mark, or the drawn-out chaos of Reagan crashing the car. The reduced emphasis on these moments gave it a much less lighthearted and comedic vibe, not to say it was bleak or entirely lacking in comedy, but there was definitely a noticeable difference to the tone. Later into the episode, I thought the usage of the soundtracks I'm Getting Bigger and Mob's Kindness were a little undeserved. The only other times the songs play are in such important, specific moments in Mob's character arc, especially in terms of the former, so to use it to underscore Takanaka's own moments of kindness was, I felt, a little forced. This isn't the only time I thought the soundtracks were misused in this season, but I'll get back to that later. Also, I know that's a very pedantic nitpick. I don't care. One thing I really liked was how the anime adapted the way the aliens look in general. They were so fucked up in the manga, I'm glad they could live up to it. Lastly, there's the matter of that entire 3-minute long epilogue at the end surrounding Inukawa's time at the alien planet. I think the animation was good, but that's pretty much the only positive thing I can say about it. I believe I've said as much responding to some comments on my other videos, but that scene just felt very weird and unnecessary, especially since the manga didn't go into nearly as much detail with that part of the story. It just serves as an unfortunate reminder that despite it being exceptional in so many ways, Mob Psycho isn't immune to some of the weird, bad tropes you see in other anime. With that said, let's move on to the final arc. Surprise! Before we do that, let's talk about the opening and ending cinematics. Oh, one. I remember when that song was first leaked from the conference it was revealed, and mob fans all around the globe were losing their minds. I like the subversion of having the title be 1 instead of 100, which I'm sure was what we were all expecting. Plus, the song itself was, of course, a banger. I love how the opening utilizes visuals from previous points of the show. It really adds a solid sense of finality to the season. Seeing all those shots fly past, you really can't help but realize that after getting this far, this is where the series ends. I also love how some of the shots in the opening kind of resemble a collage. It's very cool. You can tell the animators really take the opportunity to experiment with these openings. Overall, I'd rank it as my second favorite. This one is great, but 99.9 still has a special place in my heart. Cobalt is fantastic. I absolutely love how each ending cinematic reflects on the overarching themes of the individual seasons. The first one shows Reigen's relationship with Mob, the second shows Mob's relationships with the people he loves, and the final one focuses on Mob's relationship with himself. It still makes me a little emotional watching this ending and seeing how far Mob has come with his self-betterment. Mio Sato absolutely kills it every single time with the glass-painted animation. Now, admittedly, I had high expectations for the final arc of the show, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Some of my criticisms for this part can easily be chalked up to a dissonance between what I expected and what I got, but I think it's still worth talking about anyway, because I said so. Other criticisms are ones I can say with confidence I think were bad decisions with the adaptation. I think this arc is really great to start off with. I like how the anime distinguishes between Mob and Shigeo, both visually and vocally, and I like how it builds up the tension in the first couple episodes. Where most of my gripes with it come in are actually in the final episode. Not a complaint, but one of the biggest things I noticed was that in the anime, the rock that hit Reigen was like way bigger, and it made this awful crunch when it hit him. My jaw actually dropped, like how did he not die? Okay, getting into the actual criticisms now, I swear. So, one of the big moments where the anime took a noticeable turn from the manga was in that scene where Reigen gets more serious about chasing after Mob, and he has a whole badass moment where the first opening plays. This is a very stark tonal shift from the manga. In it, Reigen does have a small line where he talks about training his muscles and not wanting to be outdone by Mob, but here it feels more like a sarcastic resignation. He looks much more desperate to reach him, rather than determined or triumphant. A specific emphasis is put on the action of him taking off his shoes, the meaning of which I won't go into right now. But in the anime, it feels a lot less bleak and a lot more uplifting. Even Reigen himself is less battered and bloody, despite the fact that he was just hit in the head with a boulder the size of a small child. I don't exactly dislike it, at least not as much as some of the other choices in this episode, but it's definitely noticeable, and I think the tone of the manga comparatively is just better at establishing the stakes of the scene. Then there are the soundtrack choices later on. The first that stood out to me in a bad way was the song that played when Dimple returned. It sounded so sinister and uncharacteristic for what should have been a more uplifting and happy moment amid all the bleakness. It just felt weird, especially considering how Dimple's character arc with becoming a better person is finished in the Divine Tree arc. The last one, and probably the one I disliked the most, was the song choice that played when Mob and Shigeo reconciled with one another. I get it's Mob's theme and everything, but it's most associated with his explosions, which are pretty much exactly what he's preventing and overcoming in this scene. And remember the two soundtracks I talked about that were used in the communication arc, Mob's Kindness and I'm Getting Bigger? Those are two that would have been perfect for this scene. In fact, there are people who have already made edits of this scene with those songs as the score, and it's infinitely better. Ignoring those tiny nitpicks, the entire episode and the epilogue are pretty good though. Even if Teru's haircut is really weird. It kind of looks like Germa. I hope you enjoyed my 10-minute long rant about the soundtrack of Mob Psycho. While I may have my complaints about some parts of the season, I know no adaptation is perfect, and no matter how many people you try to please, there will always be complaints. And chances are I would always have some complaints of my own too. In the end, it's important to be grateful that Mob Psycho has an adaptation made by such an incredible animation studio, with such amazing voice actors and musicians. The reason why I'm being so pedantic and finding things to criticize is because I love this series so much. So I better not get any comments saying I'm being too nitpicky or accusing me of hating Mob Psycho or something, please. For evidence, see every single other Mob Psycho video I've ever made. Alright, now I get to talk about myself. So, if I'm being 100% honest, I only started making video essays for shits and giggles. But ever since this fall when I released my dimple video, I've been noticing a strange phenomenon. And that people are actually watching and enjoying my content. Before I say anything else, thank you. I know I always say thanks for watching and stuff at the end of my videos anyway, but seeing people actually enjoy the things I make is still something I have a hard time wrapping my head around. Even if I do this for my own enjoyment, I get a lot of motivation from the encouragement people give me, so thanks for giving me this opportunity. Now for some other stuff. Right now, unfortunately, summer break is winding down to an end for me. I'm going into my final year of high school this year, which will be stressful in some ways, but in others it gives me more time and energy to focus on my YouTube stuff as a side gig. If there's any videos or streams in particular you guys would like to see in the future, put some ideas in the comments. I want to try expanding my scope a little bit, which is going to be inevitable because I usually make videos on the stuff I'm into at any given moment anyway. I'm not going to force you to watch any of it, especially if it's not Mob Psycho related, but I do appreciate getting support for other stuff. I also put updates for upcoming videos in my Discord and sometimes Twitter, so if you want to keep up then feel free to check those out. I'm going to try my best to make the most of this whole YouTube thing. I hope you stick around to see it through.